Welcome to our happy half hour. It is Friday, March 20th, and today we are excited to bring you information on the topic of sales in the time of COVID-19. As we know, it's a pretty crazy time right now, and the news is changing, if not daily, almost hourly. And so we are excited to have some survey results to share with you on the business impact of this uncertain time, and also share some strategies on how to cope, how to lead your teams and motivate, not only through the short term, but as we come out of this time into the new normal. For those of you who may be having some technical difficulties, be sure to submit a request through chat to our producer, and he will be happy to help you resolve those. And today our webinar is sponsored by the Brooks Sales Leader Forum. And Russ, if you would share some information on that.
Sure. We'll tell you more about the Sales Leader Forum a little bit later on, but in these uncertain times, it makes sense for sales leaders to be able to get together and communicate. So we're going to provide an opportunity for that for those of you who'd like to participate in a weekly facilitated session to share always changing up to the date information. In fact, we're even experiencing that here. Everything we're going to talk about today, we are living at the Brooks Group. This is a joint webinar between the East Coast and the West Coast. I'm based in California, and so we are now in a stay-at-home edict from our governor, and it appears that it's going to start rolling out across the rest of the U.S. So welcome, and believe us when we say we're doing exactly like you are, working from our home offices and maintaining our productivity as best we can. My name is Russ. I'm the Director of Facilitation and Coaching here at the Brooks Group with more than 35 years of experience in sales and marketing and about 7 years with the Brooks Group.
And I'm Michelle Richardson. I'm the Vice President of Sales Performance Research. I run our research center here. I've been with the Brooks Group for 12 years, probably 25 years overall, working in sales and sales training. And as you can see, and as Russ mentioned, we are coming to you from our home offices. We are the epitome of social distancing right now, West Coast. And we are cameras on because we want you to see exactly what we're living, and we know you're living this too. So we're here to share some insights, share our experience with you, and let's get started.
Yes, and for someone who asked a question, great, you've got a Q&A function in the tool. We will be providing a replay option so you can refer this, either review it again or refer other colleagues who want to be able to see it as well. So let's talk about our agenda for today. We want to talk a little bit about some survey results that we did this week. And the thing that's so wild about this virus is that it seems the information changes every 24 hours. So we wanted to have current and up-to-date information about how our client, hundreds of sales leaders from across the country and actually around the world, are reacting. We'll talk a little bit about what companies are doing from sort of a best practices perspective, and then talk about some resources that we have available as well. So Michelle, would you, so actually, first thing we wanted to share is, if you are feeling overwhelmed this week, it's okay. Take a deep breath. We're all in crisis mode. And I know that that's maybe not the first thing you expect to hear, but you know, we have been overwhelmed personally and professionally. And as you have cared for your teams and your families and your customers this week, we have found that the need for human connection is just really, really high. I also just saw some data this morning from an organization called I4CP that did a survey earlier this week. They said that 80% of the organizations, again, global organization, hundreds of people surveyed, were seeing at least some effect, a moderate effect on productivity. Some had moved all the way to very high. So this is a week where we've just kind of ridden it out together, and hopefully we'll start to move on before that. Also, if you're a Brooks Group alum, if you have taken DISC profiling, you know that all of our behavior styles are responding differently. If you're a D, you just are trying to figure out, how do I get results in this crazy world? If you're an I, you're probably just saying, how do I socialize? How do I stay in touch with people? S's are dealing with the shock of change and the fact that none of us S's really like to change. And C's have been on the web 24/7 trying to get data related to what should I do and how can I live in this new world. So the best news is it's okay to be overwhelmed. The second piece of news that I think we now have to start to communicate as sales leaders and salespeople is it will end. We don't know exactly when, but this is not the new forever. This is some period of time. And I think we all need to be ready to communicate that to our teams and to our customers. So what are sales leaders thinking? Michelle, will you share the data with us?
Absolutely. We launched this survey on Monday evening. Really just wanted to get a sense of how the current environment is impacting other sales organizations. We certainly feel that topsy-turviness here at the Brooks Group, and just wanted to see how that was affecting other organizations and what we can do to partner and collaborate and share best practices. As you've heard many people say, we're in this together. And so whatever we can do to share information and make this path a little bit easier, we want to be there. So the first question that we asked is, how is the coronavirus impacting your lead flow? And you can see the results here. This is as of yesterday. And a good 75% are saying there's been some kind of decline. 35% moderate, 38% significant decline. I think the positive here, though, is that 27% of you are saying that it's had no effect yet, or there's been a moderate increase. So to me, we need to find the silver linings where we can. And so while the news is changing constantly, there's some mixed results here.
And we'll talk a little bit later about what you can do with digital prospecting. The key thing is that if historically you have relied upon face-to-face cold calls or even events to be able to generate leads, that is going to change in this time. This is a global survey for the question that was asked.
And the next question that we asked was how this is impacting sales backlog. And again, the results are somewhat distributed, but 20% of you are seeing significant decrease, 20% of you are seeing moderate decrease. Again, that 30% where it's had no effect at all. And some of you, about 20, are saying there's been some increase. So again, the results are across the board. I think a lot of it depends on what industry you're in. Again, a spread of data. We have a question that's come in on the sample size and the location for participants. So we sent this out to hundreds of people. We were at about 89, 90 as of yesterday morning when we pulled the results last. And this is a global survey, so it went out internationally to organizations, not only in North America, but across the globe as well.
And I would say this is probably a dynamic environment too. I think that even depending when in the week somebody answered this, they may be seeing a different effect yesterday than they did on Monday.
Exactly. And one thing I do want to mention is we're actually going to keep this survey open for a while longer. And the idea is that we want to track the trends. So we want to know, how sentiment is changing, how results are changing from week to week. So this reflects just a 4-day period of this week. So if you haven't taken the survey, we'll resend the link out, and we'd encourage you to add your thoughts. If you've taken it, take it again. Because again, we really want to track the changes and see how things are progressing as we go.
And we're using the classic terminology for backlog to mean shippable orders that you already have on the books that are ready to ship, whether they're available to ship or, available to ship, scheduled to ship, or back ordered.
So another question that we asked, what impact is the coronavirus having on your sales results? And I think, again, the silver lining here is we had 19% no effect, and we had 8% that were ahead of plan to some extent. But about 73% of you are behind in some way. And so, if you look at the results or the answers to the questions a couple slides back around leads, and then look at results, I think depending on your sales cycle, this could continue to play out for a little while. And what is your organization doing to address the impact of the coronavirus? So we gave several options in the survey. The top 4 are listed here. I think the first 2 are pretty common sense. So obviously, for those of you that can't get face-to-face, as in person, you're going to be using more virtual tools such as Zoom or Skype. And we would be happy to also share some other tools as well that we use to go virtual. Restricting corporate travel at 66%. I would say this is probably even higher right now, given, as Russ said, he's got a stay-at-home mandate in his state, and then obviously canceling and rescheduling in-person events. The other 3 results that are not listed here, the next 3, and I thought these were interesting to share, the number 5 response was increasing contact with existing accounts. So you all are reaching out to your existing accounts, trying to maintain those relationships, and that was 41%. Increasing outbound prospecting was another result, and that's at 35%, and also existing sales skill development, which we of course like to see. But those are some things that your organizations are doing to address the impact.
We have a perception that there's really going to be 3 phases to where we are today. There is the current sort of overwhelmed crisis mode where everyone's trying to adjust to this new world. There's new rules, there's new regulations. Then there's going to be an interim period, which is when we have some number of weeks or months that we are living in stay-at-home orders and still continuing to do the business that we can. And then there becomes the new normal when we start to get back to some travel, kind of the normal way in which we were doing business just as short as 2 weeks ago. We did ask a question in the survey about what people thought in terms of what it was, and it's all over the map. There are some people who believe that it could be as short as 2 weeks. Others believe that we could have impact in our business cycle all the way through this year. And there's really no consensus. So we didn't share that data as meaningful, again, because information changes so quickly.
Thank you, Russ. The other questions that we asked, and I found this particularly interesting, these were open-ended questions, so we really got a range of comments. But what are the greatest challenges your sales team is experiencing right now as a result of coronavirus? And then we want to contrast that to what you expect your challenges to be when we get back to the new normal, because let's face it, we're probably not going to get back exactly the way things were 2 or 3 months ago. And I would say, just looking through the results, in terms of the greatest challenges, they were pretty well grouped into 3 categories. And number 1 is mindset and uncertainty among your teams. So how to really keep your teams motivated, feeling positive, how to help them really navigate the uncertainty and changing news. So that was one aspect. And then also navigating the uncertainty with your clients and with your customers. So how do you manage the fact that they're no longer available? We had several clients or several organizations respond that are in the healthcare industry, and their customers are on lockdown, so they can't get into skilled nursing facilities or hospitals and that kind of thing because they just, because of restrictions. So how do you navigate that uncertainty that your clients are feeling? And then how do you shift from a face-to-face selling environment to a virtual selling environment? And really helping your sales teams learn how to sell over using digital tools like we're on Zoom today, how to prospect, how to stay in front of customers when you can't literally get in front of them. Russ, any additional thoughts on?
I would just say the same thing. A lot of the comments that came up in this were, how am I going to close business if I can't get face-to-face, if I can't shake somebody's hand, look them in the eye, and ask for the order? And that's a part of this new virtual reality that we're in, where we're going to still look people in the eye virtually. We're going to do whatever we can over tools like this to be able to ask for orders, because we're all going to be working from separate environments for a while, is I think the general takeaway.
Absolutely. I think it's also important to note that whatever you all are feeling and whatever your sales teams are feeling in terms of how do I get in front of my customer, how do I navigate this, your customers are experiencing and feeling the same way. And I think it's important to be able to relate to that. And as you're working with your teams, to share that perspective with them. For as crazy as we all feel trying to navigate, your customers are in the same boat, and to be able to really appreciate that as well. We also asked what you expect the greatest challenge to be with your sales team when we get to the new normal, and it's when, it's not if, but it's when. And a couple of themes rose there. So first of all, some of you are expecting sales to ramp back up pretty quickly, and you've got some concerns about product availability and supply chain, particularly those of you that are sourcing goods from overseas. Also, there's some concerns about regaining momentum when you've lost relationships, concern that maybe some of the people that you have relationships with in your accounts may not be there when things return to the new normal. So how do you pick up the momentum? How do you fulfill orders, and just really getting things back to some semblance of normal? I think there's a sense as well, based on your comments, that you feel that this virtual environment may be around to stay. So you're doing more virtual now, and you may not get completely back to that face-to-face environment.
And I think the other thing is, we talk about Zoom. I can't, if I had $1 for every time I've heard the word Zoom in the last 4 days, I could retire. But there's other ways to do this. FaceTime on your phones or Google Chats. You don't have to have necessarily special infrastructure to be able to reach out and communicate with your customers. Just like answering a phone call, now you can still do it, but with some kind of face capability. And I'd say the other part here that came out of the survey is just, how do I take care of my reps? The idea that they may start to disengage because they're afraid they're not going to make their quotas, and so therefore they're going to have compensation issues, and they may become demotivated. And really, this is a time for leaders to be able to, in the midst of everything else, help people understand that the way forward for the company, the way forward for them personally, is going to be to sell. And with all of the unknowns in the world, ultimately what will get us back on track is orders.
And Russ, just to point out, someone chatted to us, WhatsApp is another technology that you can use to stay in connection with your customers.
Correct. Lots of great tools.
Thank you for that submission.
And to that idea in terms of connection, that's, again, let me just take a minute and talk about the Brooks Sales Leader Forum. You can send an email to get more information, or to join at forum@thebrooksgroup.com. What we are finding is that people want to talk. They have specific questions. We got a couple even for the webinar that I'm going to address in just a couple of minutes. But it can be lonely out there, and the need to be able to share ideas and collaborate is really important. So we're gonna set up a way to meet virtually to talk about whatever the current event or topic is, maybe share some ideas. We would welcome you all to be able to join. Again, for more information, just email forum@thebrooksgroup.com. We'll have that email up again at the end of the session. So let's talk about some best practices. This is what we're doing, what we've learned here at the Brooks Group. And I just have 6 kind of simple things. And the number one thing that's kind of above all else is the need to be able to prioritize. There are so many things coming at people all at once. Priorities changing, requests from management, requests from customers. We are really making it a point at the Brooks Group that at the end of every meeting, we understand what the clear priorities are. What's number 1, what's number 2? Because everything right now seems to be a number 1 priority, and that's really hard for people. And then second, you've got to remain agile. You've got to remain flexible. If you are an S, a steady in the DISC behavior style, what's going to happen is this is going to be a hard time for you. If you're a D, It's not hard at all. You love change. And so just wherever your people are going to be, I would encourage you to let them know that, hey, this is going to be a time that's unusual, stay flexible, but make sure they have clear priorities. Number two, I'd say, is messaging and communication. You need to be able to understand what to communicate to your customers and then how you're going to communicate it. We have found that a simple one-time message is not enough. People are not receiving and hearing. At the same time, I would encourage you, please don't send out another "we have you covered in a time of COVID-19" email. I probably have as many of those as I've heard mentions of Zoom in the last week. If you are to your key customers, communicate that. Don't necessarily blast the entire email list. We also recommend that you come up with a centralized team that meets pretty regularly, that they're coordinating what are you going to be saying and spreading that message to your customers. This time of uncertainty, even we have made some recent changes. We normally do a monthly class for our sales training programs in Greensboro. We made a decision in April. We're going to do our first virtual, and we've completely re-architected our content and curriculum to be engaging and to be designed for virtual delivery. So be flexible in that case. Communication needs to be one-on-one. It needs to be to your team. It needs to be whole company, to customers. All of those different kinds of styles play in. Fear is a part of it. You can't overpromise, but there are a number of people out there who are concerned about their jobs in this new world. And how do we, what can you say or what can you not say to do that, to give them comfort? And I guess the other thing we've done in our perspective is we've actually set up a Slack channel called Water Cooler that allows us just to pass around some humor. The favorite meme we found from the week or from the day about the virus, or some other photo, just to try and help the empathy connection for people at this time. Michelle?
And Russ, if I could add, yeah, I'd like to add one other thing. At the Brooks Group, we have a saying that in the absence of information, we go negative. And our chief culture officer yesterday sent out a company-wide email, just a check-in email, and just kind of reminding us to keep perspective. And I think as leaders in our organizations, we have to help shape that communication and shape that perspective, that just because you may not be able to get that customer on the phone right then, it doesn't mean that they've succumbed to coronavirus. Right. It doesn't mean they're going away. It just means that they may have a million and one things other than your call right at that moment. And so I think we really have to, in terms of keeping that mindset, which is something that came up in the survey, helping people deal with the uncertainty, is reminding folks that this will pass, and not to immediately or make assumptions that everything is negative. And I think that's an important piece of communicating and keeping morale up.
Yeah. So our time is flying by here, so I want to make sure we cover the content. The third thing is to frequently engage both your team and customers. From an employee perspective, best practice are have people maintain work hours and then set up end-of-day check-ins to make sure that they've been able to accomplish and what are they feeling sort of at the end of the day. We're also going very strong to a video-first culture where we're trying to show and make face connections as much as possible. It helps in the communication. We talk about how an impact, how important it is, the facial expressions and body language. And so that becomes a thing to do. But then second is really your customers. Just as your business is being challenged, their business is being challenged, both from a revenue perspective and from a cash flow perspective. And they're concerned about their supply chain, just like you're concerned about your supply chain. So there was a question that came in about, who do we call first? I think that the best practice is you talk to existing customers, you confirm kind of where they are in terms of their order flow. Again, this week and probably even part of next week is not a heavy selling time. It's a time to connect, to pass insights, to have empathy, to ask and to listen. Be sure to use your customer service teams wherever possible. Again, what you're trying to do at this point is make sure that your clients and customers understand you are going to be a partner for them through this. And right now, people just need that confidence more than anything else.
Yeah, and I love the idea of sharing those insights. If there's something out of this webinar that you got that you want to share with your customers, on how to deal with things virtually, how to keep teams motivated, feel free to do so. But collaborate and be problem solvers rather than focus on selling. Just want to throw that out there too, Russ.
Avoid silos in your organization. We are social distancing. That also means department distancing. And as Michelle said earlier, when we're all under stress and when there's something new going on, we can tend to point fingers and realize that we are not our best selves, as we found in our assessments when we are under stress. So give people room. Help them recognize that we're all in this together. Ultimately, sales is going to get the order, but marketing is going to get the lead that gets to the order, production's got to ship it, and finance ultimately has to collect. And then prioritize your bests. The good news in this, again, to look for a silver lining, is that some of your competitors will not make it through this. People who are tight on cash or struggling. So there's going to be a new competitive marketplace when we get to the other end of this. The bad news is neither will some of your customers. And so therefore, you need right now to come up with a definition of what are your best customers? Are those your biggest, your strongest, your most profitable? And make sure they're really being cared for. Secondary, try and figure out who are the customers of your weakest competitors and be ready to step up and already begin to reach out to them in just a connection way so that you're ready to take that business on the other side. Those are kind of our quick, how-to points, but I'll tell you, we set up a website page called Selling in the Virtual World. You can get to it through thebrooksgroup.com, and it has a continual set of tools and abilities to help you sell in this virtual world. We believe that our job as the Brooks Group is to help you optimize sales in whatever environment you're in. And so we're giving you the best resources we can find there, as well as this continuing Friday webinar that we'll be doing. One thing I did want to share is that while the medical profession today is being stressed, and they're the ones that are going to sort of save us from this short term, I love this quote from Mike Weinberg that I picked up on Twitter a couple of days ago. And he says, we must continue to sell because salespeople ultimately drive the economy. And there was ever a time where the economy needed help. It's right now. It's not just our job, it's our duty to ourselves, to our company, to our customers, and maybe even to the country and the world as a whole. So if you're looking for inspiration, I would go there, that while we're in the medical phase now, sales will be the group that will drive us and take us out of this. So use that as a way to mold your sales ethic, to keep people at it, to help them realize it's hard without face-to-face, but we're all learning in this new world. There's a question about sort of suggesting 80-20 rule in terms of connecting with customers. Again, yeah, absolutely. The customers that are doing the best business for you are the ones that, and again, however you define best could be most profitable or strongest or most volume. Those are the ones you need to stay the closest to. As somebody wrote in as a Q&A, we have all become overnight virtual sellers. And now what we've got to do is we've got to learn to fly this virtual sales machine as we got to build it as we're flying it. So we've today tried to share some of the best practices that we think are relevant for where we are. But we are next Friday, at least at this time, based on everything we know, going to do the same 30-minute happy hour with fundamentals of virtual selling. How do you quickly transition an outside sales organization or a mixed sales organization into a virtual sales organization with a new remote platform? So that's coming up next Friday, as well as we're working on a whole series of additional resources to be able to provide to our clients right now as they're going through these transitions, including how to do better virtual prospecting, how to do better virtual positioning, how to make better relationships with people over virtual. All of those things you should be hearing from us in the very near future. We are pretty close to the bottom of the hour, but we're welcome and willing for those who want to stick around to take some questions. Again, if you have to leave, we would encourage you to reach out and email forum@thebrooksgroup.com, which will be a weekly forum and gathering for leaders to share best practices and best ideas. So any ideas or any questions, please bring them across. So there's a question that came in about measuring activity in a remote sales force. Great idea. Our metrics in terms of face-to-face meetings probably has to change. One of the things we teach in sales management is to be able to reach into the funnel and see what's happening. So I think you've got to continually be looking at your sales pipeline, asking people the kinds of questions or readjusting their metrics in terms of how many outbound calls are they making. We're hearing it's harder to reach buyers. We're also hearing that when you do reach a buyer, they're willing to have a much longer conversation. So I would say continue to have a metric around touching prospects, touching customers, and then be really good on qualifying. What are those trigger events that are going to be able to cause people to either start ordering, would cause them to cancel an order, anything that's going to affect that order delivery piece. So this is a new set of metrics, and it's a great question. Not one I've given a ton of thought to, but we'll make sure we cover it next week.
Russ, there's a question on how this has impacted the buying process. So is the buying process getting longer?
This week, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. My thought is it really kind of depends on what you sell, and if it's a capital expense, is it a recurring expense, is it a business necessity versus not. I think for us, we've certainly seen the buying process get longer. If you're in healthcare or selling medical supplies, maybe not.
Yeah.
So I think it's industry specific and product specific probably. I don't know.
I've said every product is on a continuum, with toilet paper being on the best end of the continuum and Corona beer on the worst end of the continuum. And we all fit somewhere in between there.
Right.
Okay, got a couple more questions that we want to address here. One about having salespeople have never, most salespeople have never worked from home or by phone. How do you verify? I think conversations. One of the things that I've done when I've managed inside sales organizations before is help them understand their metrics, and those have all changed now. But does it take 5 dials, 10 dials, 20 dials to get a prospect or a customer on the phone? When you have conversations, how often are they turning into conversations around proposals? How often do those proposals turn to orders or to demos? Whatever your particular product, service, or flow is. Help them realize that the things they're doing in process, the activities, are going to lead directly to the end process, which is an order in business. And that's really the best thing we can recommend, is come up with 3 or 4 metrics. I worked with a woman one time who worked for me, and we set it up that it took 10 dials to have a call, to have a conversation. It took 5 conversations to place an order. We looked at her average order size, and we worked it back and said, therefore, you've got to be making 50 calls a day, and each of those calls you should recognize as being worth so many dollars to you. And that was the way then she was able to motivate herself to keep picking up the phone. Issue on KPIs, again, let me hold that off till next week. It's not something we're really prepared to, although they should be revised. The challenge is, I think right now, we don't know enough to revise them. If you've watched the way some of the various consumer-oriented places, hotels, airlines, they're speaking to the fact that they can't change annual goals for elite status, at least, because they don't understand kind of what's happening. And I think we need to just acknowledge that it's a concern for our people, but we don't have an answer yet. Moving a sales team from order takers to solution sales, great. We're going to talk about that some more, but that's a great topic. It starts with asking better questions, but we'll cover some more of that in a future webinar. One sentence emails get a reply every time. I don't know. I've never seen that statistic before. I know that in my inbox, I am always prioritizing what is of value. And so based on the relationship your rep has with the client, they're either going to be perceived as a resource and valuable, or they're not. And so this is a test, I think, to a lot of organizations. Are we product pushers, or are we really seen as resources? And we'll talk some more about how we do that as we go forward.
Yeah, I think it's really, with the one sentence email, to your point, I think it depends on what that one sentence says. I think from my perspective, with the volume of messages that I get on a daily basis right now, I'm looking for value. I'm looking for insight. I'm looking for somebody that stands out, and it's less about how long the message is, but the quality of the message, and really being able to share something that's different and sets the sender apart.
Yeah. We had a comment here. It's really not a question. That's a customer said, I need to wait until we see how this all plays out. I agree. That's why I said we're in this first phase of crisis management. Nobody really knows kind of what the new ground level is. And as soon as we do, then we'll start to see things unwind. And what's going to challenge the most, whether it's supply chain or price fluctuation, I really believe number one is going to be demand. Where is your demand going to fall at the end of the day for your customers, and ultimately, if they're consumers or end users, then they're going to take the product. If not, they're going through a channel of some kind. But I think that's really the case. I think right now the message of stay at home is, unless you're an online business or unless you're doing delivery, demand is, I think, dropping pretty rapidly, and we're going to have to watch to see how that picks back up again. My wife and I had a conversation of, we're looking at how we get into this now, but even as we start to come out the other end, I think supply at that point becomes an issue, either from fewer companies, fewer people, fewer whatever. But in my guess, we're still weeks away from, unfortunately, being there. What's the response to a customer who says they have to wait till everything balances out? This week is yes, I understand. Next week, the week after that is when I think you start to see, where do you really fit in their overall set? The closer you are to mission critical, the more important you're going to be in that organization. You're in healthcare. If you're selling something that's related to this crisis, you're going to still have plenty of demand. If you're, just to pick something crazy, doing plastic surgery, those are probably going to be pushed off. And so you've got to understand, how close to the critical mission of the organization do you sit? Is it an appropriate time to ask for the PO or to close the sale? You've got to read the client base, I believe. If they're still processing business and their business is fairly normal, as Michelle said, one of those 30%, 33% that are not seeing an impact, absolutely keep moving. If it turns out that they're just unsure, then you don't. And I think your salespeople have to have good EQ, emotional intelligence, to be able to read those and make choices. I think we've most questions. Thank you very much. This has been great. We will tell you that we're going to be here every Friday we're going to get close to an hour. This one went a little long, sorry, because we think this is an important topic. Our walkaways for us is, make sure you have clear priorities. Make sure you're messaging and communicating clearly with staff and with customers, engaging them frequently in different ways. Avoid silos in your organization and prioritizing your bests. We just had a question come in. This is a great one. How should I relay sales expectations to my executive team? I think that you have, so my model for this would be Dr. Fauci from the CDC or NIH, can't remember which one he's with. He is truthful and strong on the things that he is truthful and strong on. And he also recognizes there's some things we don't know yet. So I saw him pressed in an interview where they said, how many weeks are we going to be sheltered in place? And he said, I don't know the answer to that question. Now, your sales executive, your executives both understand and aren't going to like that answer, and I understand that. But again, the best practice is always the best practice. Be as honest as you can. Communicate what you know is for certainty. Give them sub-checkpoints, so not just no or I don't know, but here's what I'm doing to try and learn. Here's what my team's doing, so they recognize your work. And hopefully can partner. You're going to partner with your management team that that they'll work with you on. And again, my expectation is maybe not next week, but by the week after, we're going to start to kind of figure out what life looks like. You call it the new normal for the crisis, and think things are much we keep having questions coming in. So if you have to leave, we understand. Again, we'd love for you to sign up for the forum or get more information about the forum, Sales Leadership Forum, Leader Forum at Group, forum at thebrooksgroup.com. But Michelle, I'll stay here as long as you are to answer questions, if that's all right.
And we've got a question that just came in that said, do we see this as a situation that's going to change business moving forward, or is it a temporary situation? I think that we will get back to some sense of normality, but there will be some lasting effects and some change in business. I think mainly in how we connect with each other. I think we're going to get used to using virtual tools. I think so that's going to be here to stay, probably in more prevalence than before. And I think a lot of it's going to depend on the economy and who is able to come out of this healthy. As Russ said, some of your competitors may not make it, and some of your customers may not as well. So I think that those are some thoughts that I would have on that. And Russ, if you've got some insight as well.
Yes, I think we're going to learn what worked in this new virtual world, and what is optimal. And we're going to every organization, and again, it's too early, I think, right now to do that. But ultimately, when this is over, we'll look back and say, what did we do better? Take care for our customers better? How did we more efficiently cover new prospects, or whatever it is in the sales process? And we'll try and apply those as we go forward. We will distribute a link to everybody who was registered webinar so that you can listen to it again if you'd like. There was another one that through chat about territory planning strategy during the downtime. Absolutely. Let me grab that one, an action item for either the forum or for another webinar going forward. I think that the short answer is, if you go to the recognition, the idea that focus on their business, they should be thinking about what are the strategies, what are the high gain activities that they can do now virtually to and hold on. We've heard great creativity. I heard someone the other day who was either pizzas or delivered to the homes of various customers, or things done. Maybe they sent a Grub coupon, and then they did a lunch and learn virtually, where they bought lunch, quote unquote. And I think you're going to see more of those come out. So just because you're home doesn't mean you can't still have a meaningful conversation with somebody. I do think the sales calls this week are less efficient. I think people are telling more stories, connecting more from an empathetic, having empathy, and just letting them know they're human there. And then there was another question about trigger events. We'll definitely talk about that one in terms of the next one. But right now, it's kind of, if you follow the stock market, one piece of news will cause the market to drop, or one piece of news will cause the market to go up. That news is the trigger event. Things are coming so fast and furious right now, but you might be able to have a great conversation with a customer. I have not done this yet. I'll give you that kind of a caveat. But what are they seeing now? But as they look out over the next four or 5 weeks, what are the things that they see could be affecting their business in a positive way? And what, if anything, are affected in a negative way? So start to get a view on what that trigger event looks like.
And Russ, I love that line of questioning, because it's not overtly salesy. And we've said already that, maybe now is not the right time to be pushing a lot of product depending on your industry. It's a differentiator. So your salespeople asking those types of questions shows genuine concern for the customer. and sets you apart from your competitors who are probably calling and asking for the PO at a time when maybe it's not completely appropriate. So I think that's a great tip. Even if you haven't tried it yet, I would strongly encourage others to do so.
Yeah. I think that's it from sort of a question perspective. Thank you all very much for your time. I guess there's one about kind of our business. We had already begun the process of moving virtually. I have myself facilitated a couple of virtual programs. And as I mentioned earlier, we're moving our multi-company impact sales program for April to a virtual classroom. It'll be delivered 2 hours a day, 3 days a week over 2 weeks. If you'd love more information on that, you can get it from our website, or you can email the contact here for the event. We're excited about how virtual training is not just classroom training done virtually, but there's a whole new series of tools and exercises that we can do to we think make it even more effective in many cases than face-to-face. So.
And Russ, we at the Brooks Group have been selling virtually for years. And so we are used to using these types of tools. We're used to reaching out to folks online and using digital tools. And so we also feel like we are uniquely situated to be able to provide some insight in areas like this webinar, the ongoing series, and the forum, to be able to share with you what's worked for us. Mm-hmm. You referenced that virtual selling page on our website, and there's a lot of great resources for those of you who are still online and interested in upskilling your teams virtually. There are some videos on using digital prospecting tools, how to conduct a video meeting, how to set up a remote office. So these are all things that we can share because we know they've worked for us, and we're just happy to put that information out to other sales organizations.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for Michelle and for all of the Brooks Group. We thank you for taking your time, and we look forward to next Friday when we can again share some happy hour thoughts. Have a great week.
Thank you.